Welcome all. Thank you for joining us for the Building Hope and Resilience panel presentation. We have three fantastic groups of presenters, so in the interest of time, we're going to jump right into the presentation. And our first presentation will be from the Penn Medicine Lancaster General Health team. So I will turn the floor over to Chris Glover, who's the project coordinator for that team. Thank you.
Thanks, Beth. Hello, everyone. As Beth said, my name is Chris Glover. I'm the project coordinator of Joining Forces for Children at Penn Medicine Lancaster General Health. We are an FY19 grantee, so we, like many of you, had the pleasure of trying to launch our program largely during the pandemic, which has been an absolutely fascinating experience. And so we're learning lots. And as we have been troubleshooting about really how to meaningfully engage with children impacted by addiction and their families, we have been experimenting a little bit, trying some different things, as this is a new area of service for us. And we have discovered the science of hope. Next slide, please. So why really did we decide to build hope? Well, if you were able to listen to Dr. Hellman at all, you know that hope is really all about well-being. And this illness of addiction impacting everyone in the household, we want to help people be well. And we know that hope as a motivational system oftentimes provides that motivation that's necessary for individuals and families to start their journey of recovery. We know that hope builds skills that improve well-being in the long term, and that's really something that we value in terms of wanting to prevent this cycle from continuing and help young folks rewrite their trajectory, their family history. We know from Dr. Hellman's research that building hope can help buffer against the adversity and the chronic stress that often exists in households with addiction. We know that it mitigates the impacts of trauma and really can help to foster resilience for individuals, children, and families. And importantly, hope is accessible to everyone, and it is something that we can access at any stage of our life. And so, as Dr. Hellman shared, we really kind of embrace this idea of shifting from what happened to you to what's going well for you, that shift in focus in how we engage with young people and their families. And another thing that kind of spoke to us as we started to learn about the science of hope and its application was we saw a lot of connections to NACOA's 7 C's. So I didn't cause it, I can't control it, I can't cure it, but I can take care of myself by communicating my feelings, making healthy choices, and celebrating me, right? Many of you are probably familiar with that. And we really saw this connection of hope being something that I believe my future can be better and that I have a role to play in it, helps us to make connections with young folks around what they can control, as in the context of the 7 C's, as they're kind of trying to understand this illness that their family is experiencing, and we work towards recovery with them. So that's just some of the reasons why we felt like being very intentional about building hope with young folks and their families would be a direction that our project would like to go in. And so we have started to do just that. Next slide, please. Well, so how are we doing this? So we have been working with our friends at JBS, and we have been using Dr. Hellman through his research. If you're familiar with it, you know that there is a very well-validated hope scale, both for children and another one for adults. And so when we first meet with or interact with, however that might be during this fun time we're living in, we're talking to folks about hope, and we're administering this hope scale, both with the young people that we work with and their caregivers. What we've learned from the research is that if the caregivers, whether they are biological parents or not, if they have higher hope, that automatically give those young people in that household a little boost. So we are offering this hope scale to everybody in the household. And then we're talking about their results with them, right? Whether they are currently exhibiting some low hope, some medium hope, or high hope. And we talk to them through a motivational interviewing based brief intervention sort of style about what is hope and why does it matter, the consequences of low hope, and the fact that we can build their hope, they can learn hope, we can increase it over time. And we use the fabulous readiness ruler tool to help us kind of facilitate those conversations. And then we work with folks to negotiate a plan with them. We talk to them about how hope is a very fluid, dynamic process and that it changes over time. And then through kind of regular administrations of the scale, young folks and their families can see their hope scale change over time. And that in itself can help to also nurture additional hope. And we typically will administer the hope once every 2 months or so, depending upon our engagement with a particular family. It's very fluid, as our services are voluntary and really kind of directed by the folks that we work with. Next slide, please. So as I said, we've been working with our friends at JBS to really define this process and make some tools to help us. And we have some of our community partners who are looking to do this as part of their services as well. So what we have done is we've made a facilitator's guide, and we've pulled a cohort together to participate in some motivational interviewing training in the context of a brief intervention. And in this facilitator guide that they all get, it walks them through the steps. We've developed some sample scripting. We give them some background about the science of hope as part of this work, so they're feeling confident about being able to have conversation with folks around what hope is and how to nurture it, all those kinds of things. And as you'll see, this is a snapshot. It's kind of small, kind of hard to see on your screen, most likely, of a pocket card that we've also developed. So this is a tool that folks who are using that motivational interviewing process with young people and their families, this specific card is geared towards children and adolescents. And so it has different elements on that pocket card that help us walk through this very intentional conversation. And so you'll see that we have that same hope scale that we can use to talk to them about where they fit on their scale. And then we can talk through what are some of the consequences of low hope, what are some of the benefits of high hope. And the benefits of high hope are plentiful. They can range from anything to really feeling good about yourself, doing better in school. Chan gave that very concrete example of just 2 increase in points resulted in a whole letter grade improvement in school. So it's very tangible, the results, and young folks and their families can see that. Research shows that young folks with higher hope do better when they play sports. Imagine that. They have better physical health. They have better emotional health. They show fewer signs of depression and anxiety, which we know for children impacted by addiction is quite common. And so we can work to help them lessen some of those symptoms. And again, with the goal of working towards their improved well-being over time. People with high hope tend to be more creative, and they are more fluid thinkers. They're less rigid thinkers. They tend to get along better with family members, and they tend to have better relationships with peers and friends. So tons of benefits that we can talk to young people about and connect that to the things that they are most interested in, right? Because this really works best when it is something that they identify as wanting to work for, that they really desire. That helps to build that motivation, like Dr. Hellman was talking about. And my partner in crime, if you will, our family advocate, Melanie, she really was the vision behind the image of the sparklers, in that we are creating that spark for young people. And if you've ever had an opportunity, right, to light a sparkler, chances are you've used that sparkler to light another sparkler. And that is one of the beautiful things about hope, is that it's starting that with that small little spark, right? With that incremental opportunity for, meeting a benchmark, and we celebrate, we are then helping that young person or that family light the next sparkler. Next slide, please. And so we have taken Dr. Hellman's work, and we have adapted some of the goal worksheets that he has made available to just be a little more vocabulary friendly for young people. But it's the same sort of process, right? We are having them identify the goal that they would like to work on, right? It's not our goal for them, it's their goal for themselves. And we ask them to describe the goal in as much detail as possible. And we do a lot with imagination, really having them imagine what it would be like if they achieved that goal. What would things look like for them? How would they feel? How would that impact other people in their household? And we imagine that, we have them visualize it. And then we talk through with them, different strategies that they might be able to try to reach that goal. And then we talk through, what might happen, what might get in the way or prevent you from doing that. And we identify those barriers. And then we help them really prioritize which strategy that they've identified is going to be the most likely to help them reach that goal, to get them from here to there. Whenever possible, we help them identify previous successes that they've had and build on that, right? The example that Dr. Hellman gave of learning to drive that stick-shift car, and now that you've done it, right, and you've made some success, you've gained some momentum, you're more likely to try it again, right? You're less likely to stop, and so we try to build off of any previous success that young folks have had. And I would say the same for our adults who, are working their various pathways of recovery. That's another important part of the process. If they have, a recurrence of use, they also had some success where they were not using. And so we use that to kind of walk through that as well. And then, of course, those benchmarks. Super, super important to identify those benchmarks and celebrate those. Big or small, right? Those are successes that these young folks and their families have achieved. And so we want to celebrate that with them. We are their coach, we are their mentor, we are their cheerleader in all things, because all of this work happens in the context of a relationship. And then finally, through this goal planning worksheet, we help young folks identify who and what resources can be there to help them. Certainly, we wish for them to list us as one of those resources, but we also work to help them identify other safe people in their lives, whether it be at school, whether it be another family member, whether it be another service provider. We really want to make sure that they know who those safe people are, those people that they can trust and count on and ask for help, and that they know how to do that and how to get in touch with those folks. Sometimes when we're working with families where there's been a lot of adversity, a lot of trauma, just really things are still, people are very ill and not doing well. Sometimes these goals are very short-term goals, and that's okay. Over time, we're working with them to try and make those goals, a little bit longer term. It's not a fast process, we're learning when that's the case. But we do see shifts in young people being able to build their hope, even with just those short-term goals. Next slide, please. So through our own learning, we discovered this acronym that helps us to explain this model of hope to young people. So they are learning G-Power, they are learning about goals, they are learning about pathways, obstacles, willpower, evaluating their progress, right? Celebrating those benchmarks. And sometimes, it's a rethink and it's a try again. So we are so far finding that this is helpful for young folks. I would say more so for our middle school aged and high school aged young folks that we work with. But this is another sort of tool that we have found helpful that we wanted to share. Next slide, please. So in addition to the goal planning worksheet, right, what are some other sort of strategies and activities that we're using with young folks and families to help build hope? And so we're helping them to engage in positive self-talk. And anybody who's ever tried to help anybody with this, it's a long process. It requires a lot of practice. And so we, again, as that cheerleader in the context of this relationship with young folks and their families, are able to cheer them on in that and provide that feedback in as real time as we can. Sharing stories about high hope, whether it is, in their own family, someone else that they might know, whether it is our own stories of hope. All the staff on our team, all 2 of us, we are family members of loved ones who have addiction disorders. And so we have high hope stories, and we share those with kids and families when it's appropriate. If that's not appropriate, sometimes we'll ask those young folks to think about, a TV show that they watch, a character from a TV show, or a movie that they've seen, a cartoon, whatever it might be, looking for those stories of high hope, because we know that by being around and having those stories of high hope, being around people with high hope and having those stories, that helps to build hope. This is used a lot, right, in the recovery world. I'm sure many of you know all those support meetings when people are sharing their experience, strength, and hope. It builds hope. Mentorship, we are working towards building a peer mentorship program, and part of that also is because we know that mentorship builds hope. As I mentioned before, imagination, simply visualizing what it would be like to have achieved that goal, really does go a long way to helping provide that motivation to get from A to B. And then practicing gratitude. Lots of research to support that gratitude helps with emotional regulation. It helps to build resilience. And of course, it also fosters hope. So we do a lot around practicing gratitude, because it is sort of a strategy that young folks and their families can do pretty much anywhere, right? You can take a few seconds anywhere and run through what are the 3 things that I'm grateful for today. Yeah. Next slide, please. It's also important to note that blocked pathways are not because of someone's lack of talent. They are often assigned that it is the wrong strategy and we need to try another strategy. So helping young folks to kind of understand that and navigate that is something that we aim to do. And as Dr. Hellman mentioned, we have seen the research as well that shows that glucose is connected to our willpower, our mental energy that we have every day to put towards our goals. And so we do talk to young folks about this, right? Because a well-balanced diet helps your well-being also, but it also, we talk about it in the context of building their hope. And certainly this is a priority area if we see that families are maybe needing some help in that area. We work to quickly support them in terms of access to healthy foods, not just foods generally, but healthy foods. And then sometimes, the goal isn't desirable anymore, or it's just not going to be possible. And so we're learning that we need to help young folks re-goal. And by that, we mean set new goals, right? Based on, conditions that have changed in their family system, whatever it might be, we're working with them to just modify and adjust those goals. And we are helping them celebrate those successes along the way. I know I've said this a few times, but I really believe that is a very important part of this whole process. And so that is how we in Lancaster, PA are building hope with young folks. That is it for me. My contact information is there for anybody who would like to hear a little bit more about how we're doing this. And I will pass it back to Beth at this point.
Thank you so much, Chris. Our next presentation is from the Butler County, Ohio team, and I'm going to turn the floor over to Martina Weber, who's the Director of Special Projects with Butler County Mental Health and Addiction Recovery Services Board.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Beth, can you get the next slide on there for me? Thank you. So we're going to talk about two programs that we have implemented here in Butler County, Ohio, under our OVC grant. And so I have with me today, I have Kyle Bush, who is our Research and Evaluation Associate from Miami University. And I also have Jamie Simpson, who is the Director of Camp Mariposa, but also helps with some of our other OVC initiatives. Next slide, please. So the first program we're going to talk about today is Handle with Care. And I'm sure many of you have heard of Handle with Care. It's a trauma-informed response to child maltreatment and children's exposure to violence. And it's, next slide, please. And it's a model developed in Charleston, West Virginia in 2012. It was piloted in and still going strong in 2013 and still going strong today in Charleston, West Virginia, and in many places here in the state of Ohio as well. The program is aimed at ensuring that children who have been exposed to some of these adverse events receive appropriate intervention so that they can succeed in school. Because school is often a safe place for some of these children and some of our youth. We want to make sure that they go to school and they have, you know, all the good experiences, and they have hope when they go to school, and they know that's a safe place for them. Within the Handle with Care model, we're also striving to build positive relationships with first responders. We want our children to know that first responders are safe people, that it's okay to go to a police officer when you need help. Oftentimes, children or youth, young folks will run if they see a firefighter, maybe in their house, and they are disoriented because there might be a fire. So we want our youth to know that those folks are safe, and to go to them if they're ever in a situation where there's a fire at their home or in their school, to reach out to them for help. And we also want to give teachers the power to respond with care and with hope instead of consequences to the youth that come into school who have, you know, potentially had a bad night or a bad day, or something traumatic had happened throughout the evening. We want our youth to know that they have a safe place to go that next day. Next slide, please. So just to talk briefly about what it means to become a certified district through the Handle with Care model. Just in case anybody is interested in becoming a certified district through the Handle with Care model. These are some things that you have to do. And that's working with your county or state coordinator. So Jamie Simpson is our county coordinator, but we also have a state coordinator. And you have to have like these stakeholder meetings, which are meetings that are probably already being held throughout the county. So it's just trying to find those right people and get them all in the same spot. Handle with Care training. So there is a 1-hour training that West Virginia has kind of developed. And what we do for Butler County is we've modified it a bit to meet, you know, our standards and what we want to show to our schools, and kind of how because everybody's procedure is going to be a little different. So what our procedure looks like. So there is a 1-hour training that's for first responders and all school staff. That includes administrative staff, that includes cafeteria staff, bus drivers, janitorial staff. So really everybody that comes in contact with those youth should be trained to send and respond to notices. So we'll take a look here in a few slides to see what a Handle with Care notice really looks like, at least in our policy and procedures. Provide access to on-site follow-up when needed. So what that looks like in our schools here in Butler County is that we have a mental health provider or behavioral health provider on site at school, or they can get a connection if they're not like right there at the school, but most of our schools do have an on-site behavioral health provider. So if, for example, somebody comes in and they do need additional supports, we provide those supports within the school that very same day if needed. First responders visiting the schools. So we do have what's called school resource officers within our schools. So they frequently will have lunch with the kids. They will frequently hang out with them after school in the latchkey area. They will, intervene if needed throughout the day. So they are really seeing that school resource officer is seen as a support to that youth and not necessarily as a consequence. So they're pivotal to have in the schools. It's awesome to have them there. And record and report the number of handle with care notifications received. So it's really important just to kind of see how many you're getting. It's not necessarily, we don't want any more details than that. We don't want to know if there was, a referral made or other interventions made. We just really want to see how many of those handle with care notifications were received. Next slide, please. Okay, so I love this graphic because it kind of just shows a simplistic view of how a handle with care notification works. So a first responder would respond to a home or to it could be anywhere really, but oftentimes it's in the child's home. There may be, for an example, a domestic violence dispute, and a first responder will respond to that. So once that first responder responds and takes care of the situation, they will then send a handle with care notification to the school. And it says administrative offices because typically that handle with care notification will go to a principal. It'll go to administrative staff as appropriate. It would go to, it might go to the school SRO, that school resource officer. And then from there, they will spread that information out as needed to school staff. So they're not going to send out a mass email that says to the entire, school staff that, Johnny Smith needs to be handled with care. They would send it to whoever Johnny Smith is going to come in contact with that day. So if Johnny Smith has a specific bus driver, if Johnny Smith has a specific homeroom teacher, and, so on, if they're in, gym class that day, that might go to their gym teacher. So it's very specific and it's not detailed at all. It simply just says handle with care. Next slide, please. So here's what a notification should have in it. It should just have the child's name, age, if you're able to get it. And that just helps us find out what grade they're in. School district that the child attends, or if you can get as specific as the school, that would be great too, but that doesn't always happen. Sometimes the child may only know their school and not the district. So we don't need both of those information. We really just need one so we can track them down and handle with care. And that's it. It is very, very simple to send this notification. Here in Butler County, we send it through an app, which we'll go over here in a second. But you could send it as an email. Some districts are sending them as a text message, but it's really just simple, handle with care. No other information should be shared. Next slide, please. And here's what the website looks like. So it's called Core Data, and I believe in West Virginia they use it as well. And it's very simple. What you just fill in these boxes. Like I said, officer name, and that should actually come up when they put their agency identifier in. It'll say their child's first name, child's last name. They do not have to select gender. They do not have to select birth date. They do ideally check the child's age and then school. Next slide, please. And so our first responders here in Butler County have these information codes already downloaded into our core data software. And once they're on scene or immediately after, so we want to do it as quickly as possible. We want the school to have the information by the start of the day, that next day. So our police departments will enter a 9-digit code identifier. So that way, again, they don't have to fill in a whole lot of information. When they log in, they'll know who is logging in. Fire does their 5-digit fire department ID. They complete that handle with care form and they save it and submit it, and it will be sent off to the school. Again, in the back part of core data, that information is already in there. So it's very simple for the school. They'll just log into their email that day, and an email will be sent then via core data to their school email address. Awesome. So next slide, please. And I love this graphic as well too. So this is a really great graphic just to kind of show the process flow of Handle with Care. So again, a child is experiencing or is exposed to a traumatic event. We had an example not too long ago of community violence where there were several kids who were witness to a pretty brutal shooting, and it was right in front of them. So in this situation, one of the officers on scene would take those children or that child out of that scene, away from what's going on, and talk to them about, what's your name, where do you go to school, how old are you, what grade are you in, get that information so they can send that notification, that Handle with Care notification. Then once the school district gets it, they don't do anything outside of what they would normally do unless an intervention needs to take place. So for example, if given that they saw that community violence, if they're maybe on high alert or they're not acting a way in which they would normally act, so say there's someone who might typically be a pretty quiet child in class, are starting to act out that day, or maybe they don't have their homework because they were involved in this situation last night, there might be some other interventions that we would allow. So we would give them an extension to turn in their homework a different time or a different day, or maybe, use a little bit of time after class, those kinds of things. So there will be additional support in whatever way that child may need that day. Again, if there is no incidents that are happening in school and the child's acting perfectly normal that day, then we don't address it because we don't want to re-traumatize that child. If there needs to be additional support, so the interventions that we're using, the extra time, or maybe sending that child to take a nap at the nurse's office, if that child's behavior is not improving throughout the day, then we might say, okay, well, we need to send you to the school counselor and have a discussion maybe with the school counselor. And then from there, depending on how what information comes from that, again, we're not telling them we know anything. But if there's some information that comes out of that and the child's willing to share, then we might make a referral to a behavioral health specialist or mental health therapist. But again, if nothing comes out of that, then they'll continue as their regular day, and we'll just kind of keep an eye on it. It's what our goal here is to make sure that they're successful in school, that they know they have a safe place to go, and that they're not continuing to be re-traumatized. All right, next slide, please. All right, awesome. Here's some quick examples of Handle with Care notifications: arrest of a household member, search warrants are served in the residence, drug and alcohol overdose, death, suicide of a family member, domestic violence, physical, sexual abuse, forced displacement, community violence, house fire, injury of a family member, car accident. These are just to name a few. There are so many. So we really encourage our first responders to just, if they, in their gut, they're like, oh, this feels icky. This might not be a situation that, this child might have a rough night or a rough day tomorrow. I'm just going to go ahead and send this Handle with Care notification. We encourage our first responders to do that. All right, next slide, please. All right, so we really, with these two programs, Handle with Care and Camp Mariposa, which Jamie will talk about here in just a second, we really want to work together to help our children, working together to improve our communities and really build that hope, and know that even though they may not feel fully supported in their communities or in their homes, that they do have a safe place to go within the community. All right, Jamie, I'm going to pass it on to you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Jamie Simpson, Director of Camp Mariposa, Southwest Ohio. Next slide, please. So Camp Mariposa is a weekend camp. The model is that you spend the night But with COVID, we've been doing some day camps, and I think that's kind of in there with some of our challenges. But it's been going great. They get dropped. I mean, they're with me for 11 hours. We get a whole some good content in, and like I said, the kids really look forward to it, and we keep recruiting every day. Next slide. So Camp Mariposa was created by the Jamie Moyer Foundation. He's a professional baseball player. And it was like year 2000. They did Camp Aaron for grief. And then they created this Camp Mariposa. It is a national addiction prevention and mentoring program. I've handpicked my mentors that are with me throughout my camp. It is for 9 to 12-year-olds. And, we do the traditional camp stuff, but then we also do, the addiction prevention education, and the curricula evidence-based program I use is Too Good for Drugs. So, the kids, they actually get an application. I sit with the families and they apply for, to be in camp. I think might be 15 or 16 of us now in the United States, which I think is really cool. I think Canada just started one. But like I said, it's a lot of fun. Next slide, please. So some of the topics and stuff and things that we do with the kids is reduce the feelings of isolation and guilt. The kids really connect with each other. They're open. It's so awesome how they really bond and become like their own little family. They know why they're there. Chris really talked earlier about the 7 C's. We go over the 7 C's every time that we're at camp. It's on our lanyards. We talk about those things, anything, that we come up when we do our circle time and stuff. We use these skills, with the 7 C's to get through the things that they're going through and stuff. So, and they learn the addiction is a disease. We actually just did this at one of our camps where we wrote a letter to addiction, and we did a fire and burned it. It was really very emotional, but it had such this healing component with it as well. Learn critical life skills to help manage feelings and practice self-care, and definitely have lots of fun. Next slide, please. Traditional camp activities. We've done all of these: the swimming, the canoeing, the archery, the nature walks. When our camp is at Camp Campbellgard, it's a wonderful, beautiful location. It's amazing. I have camp YMCA staff that work with me with some of the other survival skills, doing the trails and stuff like that. And then when we're having these walks and stuff like that, we have there's a station where we can throw rocks at different things, like we've got a car, a boat, a canoe. And as we're talking about these things, like how to cope, and we do talk about, substance abuse, and then educating through all of the activities that we do. Next slide. So benefits of Camp Mariposa: social support. 95% of campers have made friends at Camp Mariposa. Oh yeah. 94% of the campers report that there are adults that they trust at Camp Mariposa. I have one of my campers that, one of my male mentors, and yeah, I mean, look for it because he makes sure that, that's his buddy, and they, he likes to eat with him and looks for him, and they have their little spot where they can have their conversations. So which, is really cool. Coping skills: 90% of campers can identify 2 ways to take care of themselves. 92% of campers report that they learn things they can use at home. Positive outlook: campers believe they will graduate from high school. And then 85% believe that they can accomplish their dreams, which I incorporate. I'm a huge developmental assets person. So everything that I do and all the work that I do, I incorporate the developmental assets, and, we go over all of those things at camp too. Next slide. So some of the challenges, because we couldn't run the camp is designed, because not being able to spend the night, but we did do, we haven't canceled anything. We started right up in January. We did the day camp. One of the other things too that was a challenge is trying to break the stigma of identifying these kids. asking that question. I don't have a problem asking the question, but some people feel like, it feels a little bit uncomfortable. But we do know that 1 out of 4 kids are living or have a family member that is substance abuse disorder. So it's just making sure that, asking the question, making sure that they know that this is a program, a resource that's out there for kids to participate in. I don't think I see it on here, but I did get the approval to do a teen camp. So I'm going to be running a youth camp and a teen camp now. I'm so excited because along with Camp Mariposa, so it's ran 6 times a year, but the other 6 months that we don't have camp, we do family outings. So it's the connection with the guardians, the family members and parents and grandparents. So we do something and we went to the Reds game. We went go-karting and stuff, but then there were some siblings of my campers that were aged out that, they're always like, Miss Jamie, I want to be part of camp, and they're 13, 14 years old. And I was like, I know, but, I feel great that they are still we're getting together those alternate months of 6 months, but now they're so excited that they can apply and be, in the teen camp. Does Martina want to talk about the Handle with Care challenges? Or do you want me to do it?
Sure. No, I can do it.
Yeah.
So some of the challenges with Handle with Care due to COVID specifically was we were unable to train both educators and first responders in person. So we did develop a webinar training. And so we were able to offer a video, it was an hour-long video, and we were able to kind of just disperse it to the schools that were interested in getting training and the first responders that were interested in getting training. We've also done some Zoom meetings for interested districts, so we haven't done a full Zoom training, which we much prefer to do it in person. But we're trying to find some loopholes here that we can get this training out and get these districts up and running throughout Butler County. Of course, other COVID-related projects took priority. Schools had to figure out how to operate in person. They had to figure out how to operate online. They had to figure out, just the public safety measures to keep everyone safe within the schools. And then the same thing with the first responders. They were dealing with increases in domestic violence cases and, child abuse cases. And, we saw a huge increase in overdoses. For several spans of months throughout the summer here. So first responders definitely had a lot on their plate as well. And so these things took priority over getting training. So, but again, we've offered consultation on how Handle with Care could help identify some of these folks and some of these issues, and making sure that we're identifying the youth that are struggling during the pandemic, and making sure that we can support them through the schools and the behavioral health providers within those schools. And I'm going to pass it over quickly to Kyle, who we don't have a whole lot of time, but we want to talk a little bit about evaluation and how we've evaluated some of these programs or plan to evaluate some of these programs. So Kyle, I'm going to pass it on to you.
All right. Well, thank you, Martina and Jamie. So for Handle with Care, we've developed a fidelity checklist, and it's not quite finalized yet, but it's basically to where we can kind of keep track of just how the program has been, just the different components of the program within the schools. And so that's one way for Handle with Care. We're just we're trying to kind of have keep documentation of just how the different how the program's been utilized in the schools. And then for Camp Mariposa, so Jamie and I have gotten together to develop a kind of a supplemental survey. There's a survey that is already that kind of comes with the camp, and we've developed an additional survey that kind of that supplements that instrument, and the survey that Jamie and I have developed kind of has the questions are kind of more specific to the camper's experience and so forth. And so So for both of these tools, it's to to identify gaps, so identify gaps within the Handle with Care, gaps within Camp Mariposa, and to use that information to inform decision making and make continuous improvements.
Awesome. Thank you, Kyle. And just real quick, can you go back to the pictures? Yes. So these are some pictures from camp. Jamie, do you want to talk about what these outings were and if there's any significance with the pictures you chose?
All right, I have to tell you, the two pictures on the left are the ones through Aluna that's been there, that's been approved. I am this is our first year with our campers, and I got, we sign waivers and stuff like that, but I have several foster kids that are in my camp. So we're not allowed to have any of those pictures. So it's really hard to, and we can't really, some people put like the little emoji things over their faces and stuff like that. That makes me crazy. So I just want to make sure I keep everybody safe and confidential. I mean, they do sign the waivers and stuff like that, but I have tons of pictures in my vault with all the kids and us dancing, and, we do little skits and, all that kind of stuff. But the one on the right with the reds, that's one of my mentors and then one of our campers. So it's just super sweet because just that connection and just how much they, how they've been matched, with and how they've just really bonded. And I don't know, it's just so wonderful. I feel like camp takes too long to see them again. And, and they come and meet me at the office and they call me on the phone and talk to me and stuff like that. And there's, and they can't wait to spend the night. I totally get it. It's, we went in and saw the cabins and all that kind of stuff. And I know we'll get there. But, like I said, we zip line. That's one of their favorites. I don't zip line, just saying. Oh, but it's cute when they get up there and they're like, look, Miss Jamie, look at me, and I mean, we just, like I said, we just have so much fun. And, yeah, we're just like our little family. And it's, sometimes if they have football games and birthday parties and stuff, they're like, they don't want to go, they want to come to camp. And, it's just so rewarding. And like I said, even when we have our conversation, like the Too Good for Drugs, the education piece and stuff like that, I mean, they have their little workbooks. We have our, we do a craft activity and stuff too, which, art with heart. And just, learning all these different coping skills and all these different things, and connecting with them and just making sure that they're aware and they're not alone. And, when they partner with their other, because we have kids from all over different schools, and, we just look so forward to seeing each other. So like I said, I was scared to send too many pictures. I have tons, but it's, I just want to, this being the first year, just making sure that we're making the best decisions, like putting their pictures and stuff out there. So
Absolutely.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. I think it's great. Thanks, Jamie. All right, we'll pass it back on to Beth. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Butler County. Our last presentation will be from the Northeast Treatment Centers. And I'm going to turn the floor over to Carla Iyer, who's the grants manager with the Northeast Treatment Centers.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. As was mentioned, I'm Carla Ayer, Grants Manager for NETS. I'd like to thank the Office for Victims of Crime and JBS International for allowing us the opportunity to share a bit about NET centers and one of the interventions we're using that aligns with today's theme, fostering hope and resilience. I also need to give a quick shout out to Karen Yost, our JBS lead. Karen has been an invaluable resource and support for us these past 3 years, and we're going to miss working with her. Okay, first slide, please. Okay, so before I pass you on to my colleagues, I'm just going to briefly provide some background and context for how NET ended up where we are today doing this work with the support of the grant from OVC. NET has a long history of providing addiction and youth family-oriented services. So if we focus on our addiction treatment services side of NET, we are nationally recognized for being a leader in recovery transformation and fully implementing recovery management principles as reflected in a recovery-oriented system of care, or ROSI. So ROSI is a coordinated network of community-based services and supports that is person-centered and builds on the strengths and resiliencies of individuals, families, and communities to achieve abstinence and improved health, wellness, and quality of life for those with or at risk of substance abuse issues. That is unique in that we have fully integrated peer support from persons in recovery into all aspects of treatment. In 2007, NET developed the first non-funded recovery center in Philadelphia, run by people in recovery for people in recovery, including peer specialists. This program was internationally recognized for its involvement in the transformation and integration of peer services. NET was also a contributor in the development of the Recovery Specialist Toolkit promoted by the Department of Behavioral Health. So moving on to the child welfare side of NET, in 2012, the Philadelphia Department of Human Services launched the Improving Outcomes for Children initiative. This was a large-scale transformation of the child welfare system based on the premise that positive outcomes are achieved when services are family-centered, community-based, culturally competent, and accountable for results. So in doing so, the city was divided into 10 geographic regions, and child welfare service provision shifted to private agencies or community umbrella agencies. These agencies are located within the neighborhoods they serve to ensure that local solutions and resources are more accessible to children and families. NET was the first agency in the city to receive a contract in 2013, and we began operating our community umbrella agency, number one. 2 years later, we were awarded a second region of Philadelphia, and so we now operate 2 PUAs, serving approximately 1,100 families and 2,500 children annually. So the Improving Outcomes for Children initiative uses the Strengthening Families framework and the 5 protective factors as its foundation. Those are parental resilience, social connections, knowledge of parenting and child development, concrete supports in times of need, and social and emotional competence of children. All of these factors are being addressed as we work with families under one umbrella. Next slide, please. So we chose to provide you with this background to draw the comparison between the recovery-oriented system of care that we're using in our addiction programs and then the Strengthening Families framework, which is being used in our child welfare programs. These models are both based on many of the same principles and values and emphasize building on the strengths and resiliencies of individuals, families, and communities. And we sort of color-coded the slide to draw your attention to the similarities. So it only makes sense that NET would then focus on the integration of our addiction and child welfare services to provide better continuity of services and ultimately foster better outcomes. According to the publication Child Trends, in 2017, the rate of children entering foster care due to parental drug abuse had increased by 5% from the previous year and has increased actually 53% from 10 years prior. It's also estimated that about 1 in 3 children placed in foster care is a result of parental substance use issues. So needless to say, these 2 disciplines need to be integrated. Just to wrap up my portion, if we could return to slide 1, please. Thank you. So we've listed the focus of our OVC grant here. Again, integrating our addiction recovery services and child welfare services. We provide staff training. So we cross-trained our child welfare staff and our addiction staff. Child welfare workers receive a lot of training, child welfare issues and child abuse and neglect, but not so much on addiction. So we felt it was really important to start integrating those programs. We have a parenting education program that's traditionally embedded in our child welfare services, but that's been also now expanded to and is used in our addiction programs as well. We created a recovery peer position within our child welfare agency, working with those caregivers and family members who are working on recovery. We created some educational materials for youth and teens on drugs and alcohol. And then last but not least, we have our Recovering Together cafes, which we are very proud of. And this is the program that my colleague, Sheila Ford, is going to be talking about next. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Sheila Ford. I'm actually the Community Engagement Coordinator for Northeast Treatment Center. So could we go to the third slide, I believe it is. Thank you. So before I get started with our slides, Northeast Treatment and another nonprofit agency out of New Hampshire, Greater Tilton Area Family Resource Center, we collaborated with Be Strong Families in the co-creation of recovery cafes, utilizing strengthening families model of recovery. So Recovery Cafe began with the hopes of creating a resource for support of people struggling with opioid addictions and those who have yet to identify that they may have a problem and people that support them in their addiction. First, recognizing that everyone is recovering from something in their lives and may be looking for a way out, we came up with the name Recovering Together Conversations to promote recovery and, of course, well-being. Recovery Together Cafes, it's an unauthoritative, structured discussions that provide opportunity for individuals to grow together towards a positive, transformative change. Recovering Together Cafes, that's a long name. So I'm going to say RTC from now on. RTC provides physical, emotional safe spaces for conversations around substance abuse challenges, as well as the victims. Participants in the cafe will find that we're not alone and that we have personal and collective strengths necessary to let go of the shame, guilt, stigma that's attached to addiction in order to move forward. So I'll go to our first slide with the collaborative process. RTC, our mission started about 4 years ago. Net Centers, along with the co-creators, combined our addiction and our recovery with Be Strong Family expertise in developing sustaining, meaningful conversations that fosters opportunities that significantly impact a person on their road to recovery. With that being said, we created the focus groups. This was totally participatory from more than 63 individuals from both agencies, those who either had lived experience or professional experience in the field of addiction. In creating so, we utilize what we call foundational values of recovery, recognizing that 1, recovery is possible. 2, we respect all pathways to recovery. Another one is people benefit from support in their recovery process. And while understanding lastly that recovery cannot be forced, NET and our partners vetted over 500 questions from our prospective agency, extracting 300 thought-provoking questions for conversations. So another byproduct of the collaborative process was to generate revenue once this grant has ended. Our hopes is to train other agencies on the Recovering Together Cafe, which is a part of sustainability plan. We're all familiar with that. Next slide, please. So we're going to take a moment, and this is going to cause for the audience participation. If you will, we're going to ask that the first question, and these are simple questions you may think, but to answer it, it's not something we have a answer on the tip of our tongue. So while I present the framework of what our cafes look like, I would like for the audience to pretty much ponder how they would answer these questions. And please feel free to utilize our chat. We have our third presenter that's going to be monitoring those answers, and we'll discuss it towards the end. So the first question, what steps do you or could you take to keep negative energy from dragging you down? This is deriving from our mental and emotional domain. The second question, again, it's on the slide, so if I'm talking too fast, feel free to revert back to the slide. What makes you come alive and why? And that's from our spiritual domain. So what we've done, while you're pondering that, we've established appreciative, generative questions for participants to answer in order to shift from negative or neutral place to a positive one. So back to your participation. From our mental and emotional domain, our framework is as follows. Just take a breath. I want to be able for you to visualize what a cafe looks like. If you go into a cafe, remember, eyes closed, you see moderately decorated tables. There's a caterer with food so that the families are able to dine together. We'll have seats. The framework starts with the domains, which is the focal point for people in recovery. The first domain is social. That's for our social connections when we're in trouble, in time of need. Next slide, please. Our environmental. What is our safe space? We do refer to always being free from people, places, and things. So our environmental is very important. Also, our next domain would be financial. Now that our families, our loved ones, our children are no longer using substances, how do we maintain our financial obligation? Even if it's a child saving up his allowance per week. Then we move on to our spiritual domain. Who do we believe in greater than ourselves to get us through this? One main component is the mental and emotional. We always want to remain well mentally and emotional. And that's something you can't put your hands on or sometimes not even see. So, and the last one, we always deal with our physical well-being. Are we maintaining our weight, our eating habits? So those are the 6 domains that are focal points for the Recovery Together Cafe. Normally we'll start with a theme. Let's use themes such as remaining grateful. That's a term that's used in Just for Today. It's a cliche from the Recovery 12-step program that we use. We then go to our one-on-one debriefing. We have people, once you see the tables, there's 5 people per table and 1 host. The host is there to guide the conversation. So we'll have people team up. They'll start to have a conversation, 2 minutes in conversation, 1 listener, 1 speaking. And this is an active listening skill. This is to kind of gauge, are you actually listening or hearing what the person's saying? And our meat of the cafe is the questions that I just posed to you. Those are the questions that generate the conversation. Once that's done, and we debrief, we form a commitment letter. Those letters are focused on whatever domain we spoke about that day and our promise for self-care. Those letters are then put in envelopes with the person's address and mailed back to them within a month's time. So once they receive this mail, they'll say, wow, I do recall that. I did make a promise to myself that I would do better self-care. And lastly, we have, of course, the feedback forms. The feedback form measures the impact of the cafe. It allows participants to digest the experience of the cafe while creating an additional opportunity for the team to examine in what areas can we improve, our targeted population, the outcomes, and whether or not the information adds to one's resiliency on the road to their recovery process. And lastly, once again, it's always that sustainability purposes. We're now performing the cafes once a month, but we want to sustain this atmosphere. When we have teenagers that are coming out and willing to engage in conversation, we don't want to stop it. Once you show consistency, a teenager is more likely to engage and stay in the recovery process. So now that I've managed to put over 60 people to sleep in 5 minutes, I'm gonna give you to our newest member of the team. And this is our hope shot of the team because she's able to engage and get the attention of the younger people that I possibly could not. And this is Talia Jones, and she's our program coordinator. Talia?
Thanks, Sheila. Hi, everyone. I'm Talia. So I just wanted to start by going over some of the responses that we got. So thank you for those of you who participated in and put your responses in chat. So again, just to kind of go over the questions again, we asked, what steps do you take to keep negative energy from dragging you down. That would be in our mental and emotional domain. And then we also asked about what makes you come alive and why. So those are pretty, that one's in the spiritual domain. Those are pretty similar questions because they're asking you to self-reflect maybe on things that you enjoy doing, coping skills. The mental and emotional domain is the health and well-being of your mind. So this is your feelings and emotions, your mental capacity for learning. And then the spiritual domain is anything that helps you stay alive and helps you with positive energy, focuses on spiritual values, creativity, hope, love. So some of the responses we got, blocking negative energy, deep breathing, speaking out against the negative energy, taking a walk outside, getting some sunlight, maybe for an adult, smudging with sage, gratitude, meditation, spending time with animals and nature, breathing, moving, connecting with others, and focusing on what you can do to impact instead of what you cannot. We also have for coming alive, seeing others thrive and serving others, which I think many of us can identify with. And so I had to think about these questions myself too. It's things that we probably don't really think about, especially with what makes you come alive. I asked myself this, and I came up with music, nature, laughing with friends, trying new skills, whether I'm good at it or not. Just the process of learning is fun. So we are getting some more responses in. Time with family helps you come alive, going for walks during the workday. So these are all really great. And this is really part of what the cafe is all about. Reading my Bible. Thank you. That's really important for spirituality. But yeah, it's really about collaboration, thinking about some of these questions that we don't often think about. And really one of the aha moments I want you to take away, and what we take away from our cafes, is different ideas for ways to cope and deal with negative energy and things as it comes into our lives. We also want to think about what makes us come alive. I think in recovery, it's very important to think about the positive things. A lot of times we think about the negative things, but coming alive, like what makes us us, what makes us happy, what makes us feel good. That's a very important part of reconnecting with ourselves as well. And then the other aha moment, and this is something we want everyone to take away from our cafes, is that we all can kind of, see what other people are thinking. We can connect in some ways. Like I identify with a lot of these coping skills and things that make us come alive. So just that sharing fosters connection. Next slide, please. Yes. So yeah, just being able to connect is a great part of the cafe. So I wanted to go over kind of the table host experience. So first, I want to say, like, I'm one of the people within that who I do bring lived experience to our Recovering Together cafes. And I first started attending as just an attendee. And I thought it was a very, very helpful environment just to be able to talk about some of these issues that may be on, my mind, but in normal spaces, we can't really talk about. So like, just take spirituality. A lot of times getting into conversations about religion or spirituality can foster some negativity or some friction between people. But in this space, it's really individualized. It's all about like my growth and my experience. And I like how we put a positive spin on that. The Recovering Together cafes, it's also very inclusive. One of the things that I love is the idea that we're all recovering from something. So that means mental health, substance use. We can all identify on some very common things, and we all have that need for connection. And this is a way to do that, to bring that together. It's people from different walks of life coming together to express their journeys and their experiences. We really allow and open this up to anybody. It can be somebody who's in recovery. It can be their family member, or it can be somebody in the community that doesn't really have an affiliation with recovery, but they just want to learn. So we enjoy that as well, just having people know more about what we go through as persons in recovery. I enjoyed my experience so well that I wanted to get a little bit more involved. And so I became a table host. And that's really just a step of like the progression is being an attendee and then moving forward with hosting a table. And my role as a table host is really to foster collaboration, continue with the discussion, help the discussions continue when we're going over those domains. I'm also looking to make sure people are following what we call our agreements. The agreements are done at the beginning of each cafe experience so that we can make sure everyone's safe and comfortable and doesn't feel excluded. And I can kind of remind people along the way, hey, make sure we're sticking to our agreements in a very positive manner. I also really think that the table host experience is great because it's not like an IOP setting where you might have like a counselor or someone fostering things and the dynamics may be a little bit off, but here everyone's equal. I'm just here as another support. We're all supporting each other. And it's just a really great experience. And ultimately being a table host is a way for me to help people. I find that, you know, I meet so many people and they bring different perspectives that really helps me along my recovery journey. So looking forward, what we are hoping to do at NET is bring these recovery cafes to our teens. So we would like to have our teens participate in the cafes as attendees, and then also get to a point where we're doing peer-led, teen-led recovering together cafes. And this is really so that they can feel safe and comfortable expressing like what's really going on with them at their level with no judgment. Because, you know, as an adult, I'm still fairly young, but I'm very disconnected from what's going on with our teens these days. And it would be nice to give them a space to really talk about some of the things that they're seeing either within their own schools and communities with drug use and mental health, or with themselves, with their families. So we think it's very important to have this place for them to come together. We actually had a teen at our last cafe. We just did one a couple weeks ago, and we had our first teen who came with her mom, and it was really great. The energy that she brought was just really, it was really refreshing. She was very interested in asking questions and providing feedback. And that was it just made us all the more excited to move forward with this as we continue to grow. And our hope is that the teens can also build skills that they can take into adulthood. And so we plan to first market this within our youth services at NET. We have different departments who deal with adolescents and teens, and we want to try it with them and then perhaps branch out into the community with other agencies and perhaps schools. So we can see a lot of growth with this, and we're very excited. Ultimately, we just want to help people in the Philadelphia area, and then maybe one day branch out to helping others across the country with our Recovery Together cafes. So now you've heard a little bit about NET and a little bit about the Recovering Together cafes, and we hope that you can see this as a resource to build a bridge with our families. So that's really all we have today. I will turn it back over to our moderators. Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much. We have about 10 minutes left for questions. If we cannot get to everybody's questions, we will follow up after the meeting. We did have one question for Chris from Lancaster. Have you found that your work with others around hope and building hope has increased your hope and your staff's hope as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I would say we've noticed that both professionally and personally. Absolutely.
Great, thank you. For Martina and team, can you discuss more about how you were able to engage the schools and law enforcement to implement Handle with Care, and what brought everyone to the table to collaborate on it?
Sure, we're still working on that. So we've done it by school district. So instead of taking the whole county and getting every school and every jurisdiction at the table, we have 10 public school districts in Butler County. So we've just gone district by district to see who was interested. That's what we did first. And then of those interested parties, we trained them. So for full transparency, we only have one fully blue certified trained district in Butler County. And I like to brag on them a lot. They're the Fairfield City School District. But we do have several others that are on board, and we're getting close. So I think to answer your question, I think the most effective way to get people on board is to meet with them in person. and talk about examples of when they could have used a handle with care notification, both in the school and when a first responder thought, or an SRO, it would be even better, thought that a handle with care notification was necessary and could have been useful. So it's really just marketing yourself, getting out there and talking to the folks that would be using this model day in and day out.
Thank you, Martina. We have a question for Carla. For the child welfare training on addiction that you provide, are you using a curriculum or did you design your own?
Hi, so we are using a curriculum from SAMHSA. The child welfare is like a 12-module curriculum. The exact name of it is escaping me right now, but I can certainly follow up with folks and send them the link to that.
Great, thank you. And we'll get that out to everybody. Another question for Chris. Have you found, oh, I'm sorry, I already asked that. Where can you find more information about the Hope Talk tool, Hope Scale, goal planning and worksheets, and additional resources to bring some of these incredible Hope teaching tools to those we serve?
First of all, I'm super excited that you're interested. We would love to share them with you. We are in our final round of approvals, so we expect to be able to share those in the next couple of weeks. So please be in touch, and I'd be happy to share them as soon as they're available.
Thank you, Chris. Another question for Martina and team. For Handle with Care, are parents notified of the notice that goes to the school?
That's a great question. No, they are not. However, what we've seen in other schools, not in the ones that we're working in Butler County, but for other schools, my daughters, for example, the teachers have taken it upon themselves to hand out like an 8x8 card that says Handle with Care in big neon yellow letters. And it's a kind of informational flyer that says, you know, if your kid has had a rough night at home, and, you know, for whatever reason, they lost a tooth at midnight, or, you know, you just had a new baby in the house, for whatever reason, you can contact your teacher. The parent can contact the student's teacher and just say Handle with Care, you know, no other information needs to be given. And then they'll know, like, hey, that student had a rough night. We're gonna follow this on the flow chart. We're gonna follow these interventions instead of just going about our day business as usual kind of thing. But no, we do not have a system in place, nor does the Handle with Care model out of West Virginia have a system in place to notify parents. That would be up to the schools if they want to have something in place for that.
Thank you, Martina. This question is for the NET team. Is there training for the recovery cafes for youth?
Absolutely. So we go through a rigorous training. First, participants are to at least be a part of 2 cafes itself to get to know what the format looks like. And then we will perform a 1-day training for the host. And after they become training table hosts, then we'll do a facilitators training. And that's all on the course of maybe 6 weeks. Not for the youth. That's going to be the same format for the youth. We'll do a 1-day training for the youth. We'll give them some background in addictions and recovery so that they'll know exactly the content of what we're presenting.
Great, thank you. Another question for Chris. Do you have the resources in other languages?
We have some materials available in Spanish. Our family advocate is also bilingual, so most of the initial work using the Hope Talk tool is done in the context of a conversation. So she's able to facilitate those conversations in both English and Spanish. Once we have a finalized tool, we would certainly look to make those resources, which are really more for the professional, available in other languages.
Thank you. For Martina and team, do you provide trauma-informed training for the schools as part of your Handle with Care work with them? If yes, what is the response?
So we do. It is actually part of that hour-long training video. The first half of that hour-long training video, actually the first really 45 minutes of that video is, or that training is like a Handle with Care, or is with a trauma-sensitive response and trauma-sensitive schools. So it's brief. It's not, it's very high-level trauma training, but they do get that within the Handle with Care training. It's kind of packaged with that Handle with Care training. Some districts have done full days though. So we've had several districts that have taken their professional development days, and they have focused on like social emotional learning. And they've done a lot of trauma trainings through that, which for those schools, those are the schools that typically want to have Handle with Care in their schools. So there is a correlation there. Most of the schools have been very welcoming of Handle with Care. The response has been great. We have one school district that we're struggling a little bit with getting Handle with Care and any kind of trauma training in that school specifically. But most of the other districts are hugely on board and really excited about Handle with Care. It gets a little bit more tricky with the high school folks because sometimes they think that's more hand holding and, we're giving some of these students a pass. But the more education you do with the high school level educators, the more they can see, okay, well, maybe there is a situation where I could give this kid a break, or, we want to do these other interventions instead of offering or providing discipline.
Thank you. We have a question for Jamie about Camp Mariposa. Do you have funding available to help launch the programs, or do you have to identify resources on your own? And do they train you to implement?
So the Aluna Network, they have a best practices guide, and I've already been through the whole training. The resources, I've been doing this work celebrating families and the NCOA in the school districts. I piloted a Celebrate Me, which is definitely it's a hybrid model that I use in the school. So I bring all of that to camp as well. But we do have the different required components. We talk about signs of suicide. We also talk about, like Too Good for Drugs curriculum. I've trained my mentors in that. But I do have funding to support all of the education and like I said, the camp is free to the kids and the outings and stuff as well. We do therapeutic outings, we do social, we do educational. So I bring all those resources from the experience that I've had of all the work that I've been doing since 2008 with this, the audience that I'm working with the substance abuse and addiction.
Thank you, Jamie.
Yeah.
I think we have time for one more question. I believe this was Chris, but please correct me if I'm wrong. Someone mentioned 7 C's and they're asking, what is that referencing?
The 7 C's is, I would say, a framework that was developed by the National Association for Children of Addiction. And the first 3 C's come from the Al-Anon community. And then one of the gurus in our field, Jerry Moe, added that second half to the C's. So it's really a way to kind of help young folks and I would argue other loved ones cope with the experience that they have when someone that they love is experiencing addiction. So it is, I did not cause it, I cannot control it, I cannot cure it, but I can help take care of myself by communicating my feelings and celebrating me. Those are the 7 C's, and you can find those on the National Association for Children of Addiction website, NACOA.
Thank you, Chris. So we've come to the end of our time, and thank you everyone for joining. Quick reminder to please make sure to check out the Grantee Spotlight videos that will be running during the break. And to view the videos, all you have to do is click on the Comfort Break link on the left-hand side of your screen. So thank you, everyone.